Chapter 9, Hijacked. Mac doused the cab lights and reached for the switch that would start the diesel. But at that very moment, a loud voice from the darkness outside, the truck called, "Reach for the sky. Don't make a move. Hands up. We've got you covered." Mac froze at the wheel. Henry's heart leaped up in his throat, rioted around, and settled back down in his chest again. Two men jumped up onto the truck, one on each side. Each man carried a small blue revolver. The guns were pointed straight at Mac. After a moment, Mac found his voice. "What is this?" he asked. The man on Mac's side of the truck, the one with the mustache, replied, "This, sir, is a robbery. A stick-up, a hijacking, in fact. Section 3, Part 4 of the Criminal Code, seizure of a cargo of goods from a vehicle or vessel on the roads or waterways." "Oh," said Mac. "Right, Louis?" said the man on Henry's side of the truck. He was the smaller of the two thieves, and instead of a mustache, he wore horn-rimmed glasses and a lopsided smile. "I'm Lefty, he's Louis." The man went on. "People get us mixed up sometimes, but I don't know why." "My name is Henry Green," said Henry, "and he's Mac." "Pleased to make your acquaintance, I'm sure," said Louis. Even though under these unfortunate circumstances, polite as they seemed to be, Louis and Lefty were still pointing their guns at Mac and Henry. "You sure you want to do this?" Mac asked slowly. He seemed to be puzzled by the hijackers. "I think you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble." "Trouble?" said Louis. "You'll be in trouble if you don't do exactly what I say. Now climb up to that bunk there, both of you, so you can get on with the job." Henry did as he was told. With Mac following slowly behind, Mac was getting angry. Henry could see when he spoke his voice was calm. "I don't suppose it would be much good to tell you that you are definitely breaking the law," he said. Louis laughed. "Breaking the law? Mister, we are fracturing it." And with that, Lefty jumped into the driver's seat. Louis took his place beside him, and the truck began to roll. Mac still had something on his mind, and above the roar of the motor, he called down to the pair of thieves. "You better stop now. I think you're making an awful mistake." "There's no mistake about it," Louis called back over his shoulder. "We know exactly what we're doing. We're hijacking a cargo of expensive furs." Mac looked dumbfounded at this last piece of news. Furs?" he cried out. "Furs?" And with that, he started to laugh. Great gusts of laughter poured out of Mac. He doubled over 1 or 2 times, and finally tears came to his eyes and rolled down his cheeks. "Oh, Lord," he cried, when he finally could speak. "They think they're stealing furs." The more Mac laughed, the more concerned Louis became. He signaled Lefty to stop the truck, and when he had turned to look up at Mac, in a low voice he said, "No furs?" Mac, taking care to his straight face, simply answered, "No furs." "Then what?" Louis began as Mac interrupted. "Candy bars," Mac shouted, the laughter beginning again. "Ha ha, candy bars." "Oh no," Louis said, "chocolate bars. Ha ha." "With almonds." "Nuts," exclaimed Lefty, "and some without almonds." "And what are we going to do with a load of chocolate bars, genius?" Lefty demanded of Louis. "Ha, ... and some with crunch. ... Ha, and some without crunch." "Chocolate bars. I can't believe it," Louis mumbled. "You said this job would be like taking candy from a baby," Lefty said in an angry way. "But chocolate bars? And some with caramel. Ha ha." As Mac continued his roll call of the various kinds of candy that the truck carried, the two thieves sat silently in the front seat staring at each other. It was plain that they were amazed. After a while, Lefty spoke. "What do we do now?" he asked Louis. "I don't know," Louis replied, "but I'll think of something. Meanwhile, let's get this truck to the hideout and some of it with the peanut butter. Ha ha, but none of it with furs. Ha ha." With Mac's laughter ringing in their ears, the unhappy thieves looked glumly ahead as the truck rumbled through the night. Taking a licking. Lefty was driving very carefully, making sure he kept the big truck within the speed limit. From his perch up in the bunk, Mac was keeping a watchful eye on their route. Henry tried to keep watch too, but as the hours flew by, he found himself nodding. He was soon asleep, his head cradled on Mac's chest. As the first streaks appeared on the eastern sky, the big man was holding his arms about the boy, cushioning his body from the shocks and jolts. As the truck shifted gears and slowed, Henry's eyes... Mac whispered, a finger held to his lips. "Where were we?" Henry whispered in turn. Mac put his mouth almost against Henry's ear before he answered. "Far out in the country," he said, "a long way from nowhere." "Now when we get where we're going," he continued, "I want you to keep a sharp eye on me. Don't do anything sudden and don't run." Let's just be very careful here, okay? Henry nodded. He would follow Mac's lead and do as he was told. The big man was a person you could trust, especially in a tight spot. They were traveling along a 2-lane road now with just a few houses set wide apart. Lefty was driving the big truck very slowly, looking right and left at every crossroad. "Any time now we're going to turn off," Mac whispered. Henry agreed. They must be very close to the thieves' hideout, he thought. Go away. Lefty slowed the truck almost to a crawl and turned down a small dirt road. The truck bounced along the narrow track, turning right, and he left through the trees, and in a few minutes came to a stop in a grove in the pines, near a small wooden cabin. When Lefty had turned off the motor, Louis called up to them. "Gentlemen, we have arrived. Last stop, everybody off." Lefty and Louis opened the cab doors and stopped down out of the truck. "Easy now, you two," Louis said, as Mac and Henry joined them. "No sudden moves. No funny business. No tricks, right?" "No tricks," Mac said quietly. Louis had his gun in his hand again. Henry could see. With the gun pointed squarely at Mac, the thieves led them into the cabin. It had one room, dirty and desolate looking. A wooden table and dirty and crisp chairs stood in one corner, and Louis prodded Mac and Henry in that direction. There were no windows in the cabin and light, and until Louis lit a small lantern that hung from the rafters. Lefty pulled a chair over near the door and sat there, gun in hand, watching carefully. "Well, now," Mac said, "what comes next?" "What comes next is up to you," Louis said. "Play it smart, and we will leave you here when the job's over. Give us trouble. Just don't give us any trouble." With that, Louis drew a chair over near Lefty, and the two of them fell into a quiet conversation. Lefty was angry, that much was clear. "What did we do with the load of candy?" they heard him say. Louis spent most of his energy trying to keep Lefty calm. Looks like our friend over there bought a pack of trouble," Max said to Henry. "Instead of fours, they got something they don't want," said Henry, and they both had a quiet chuckle, followed by several minutes of quiet giggles. When their mirth had subsided, Henry asked Mac what was really going to happen. "I don't know," Mac said, "except for this. If either one of them tries to put a hand on you, I will personally lay them out flat, gun or no gun, so don't you worry here." That was a kind of iron in Mac's voice now, and Henry was sure that when the moment came, the big man would be ready for it. Just then, out of the corner of his ear, Henry heard a faint and faraway sound. It could have been a dog barking. Mac heard it too, and then the two of them sat quietly listening. It was barking all right, but now there seemed to be two dogs barking. Mac put his hand on Henry's arm. "No noise now," he said. "Listen." The barking got louder and closer as the seconds ticked by. Louis and Lefty had heard it too. They stood near the closed doors, listening for all they were worth. You had to be deaf not to hear the chorus of yelps and yells. It was getting louder and louder with every moment. "Keep them covered," Louis shouted against the din. "I'm going out to see what's happening." Lefty shuffled over to the corner where Mac and Henry sat, his drawn pistol looking at them straight in the eyes. Louis, gun in hand, opened the door and froze on the spot. But only for a split second, for at the exact moment, a big German shepherd came sailing through the doorway and landed on Louis's chest. Louis was knocked flat on his back, and his pistol clattered across the floor. Behind the German shepherd came a whole army of yelping, barking dogs, all heading straight for Henry. Airedales, Dobermans, a brown and white collie, several spaniels and setters, and a small French poodle. They were yelping and jumping and barking enough to fill the little cabin with noise and confusion. Lefty was stunned, speechless, absolutely confused by the dog riot that was taking place before him. But Mac knew what he was about. In a flash, he pounced on Lefty and took the pistol right out of his hand. Then he leaped to where Louis's gun had fallen and scooped that one up too. One gun in each hand, Mac rolled face to face to the pair of confused crocs. Louis was still on the floor. Lefty was surrounded by a pack of yipping, yapping dogs. Even if he wanted to run, he couldn't. Henry, of course, was the star attraction for the animal army. They were licking him as if he were some sort of new dog. His arms and legs were covered with happy-looking dogs.
All of it made him laugh so hard he could secretly protest. While we were going on, still more dogs were racing into the tiny cabin, and behind them came people, most of them with leashes in their hands, and all with the same puzzling story. They had been out walking with their dogs when, one after the other, the animals had put their noses in the air, sniffed widely, and then began racing madly along the dirt road as if following an irresistible scent. Now, what could have made those animals behave so strangely? And what about those pistols? What was going on in this cabin anyway? Why did the place smell like a chocolate shop? It took about an hour and the arrival of the local police to sort it out. Mac had a lot of explaining to do, but when it was all over, Louie and Lefty were handcuffed as they were being led away. Henry heard Lefty mutter, "We go after furs and we get candy bars. We get our hideout and invaded by dogs. It's getting so a guy can't make a dishonest living anymore." "Ha ha," said Mac and Henry together. As the police car turned out of sight at the end of the tree-lined dirt road, they were still laughing. "Come on, kids," said Mac between chuckles. "We still got some candy to deliver."